Welcome to the Project Endure podcast, the place where we talk about life, endurance, persistence, perspective, and so much more. I'm Joe Rinaldi, and I'll be your host. Let's jump in. Welcome back to the Project Endure podcast. It is episode 9. We have myself, Joe Rinaldi, and we have a very special guest down in Texas, but originally from Scotland, Andrew Russell. Andrew, how are you, man?
I'm great. How are you?
Oh, I'm so good. You know, on the Pursuit podcast that I co-host with Sam, we've had various guests from different places, Canada, Minnesota, places that, come with different accents. This is the first time we've talked on camera that's been recorded, and I'm so excited to just hear your accent for the next 45 minutes to an hour. So why don't you just give people a little bit of a rundown about who you are and what you're all about?
Sure. Yeah. Well, at the outset, I'll say that if anyone's listening and they can't understand anything that I say, send me a message on Instagram and I'll give you subtitles for whatever I said. I live here in Texas with my wife, and my wife is from Texas originally. That's how we ended up here, but we met when we were both in Scotland. I grew up there. I was born in the same town that I met my wife, and we met in church. I'm a tall guy. I'm like 6'4", she's 6'1", and we say that we met over the top of everyone else's heads because we could see each other because we were both so tall. But yeah, that was, we met in 2017, and in that process, we dated in person in the same country for a few months, and then did long distance longer than we were actually in the same country while we did the visa process. And then that was a whole journey that I'm sure we'll get into in the process of me getting my visa. But yeah, I moved here February 29th of 2020, and then we got married March 8th, 2020. And then my parents flew home, my parents and my siblings and my best man flew home in the last flight back to the UK before the COVID shut down. So.
Oh my goodness. Just under the wire. That is incredible.
Oh yeah.
Did you guys get to go on a honeymoon?
Nope, not yet.
Oh man.
Not yet. Because on top of that, been waiting on my employment authorization and travel permit and stuff. So we just haven't, and obviously only one of us being allowed to work meant money was pretty tight and stuff. So we just haven't had a chance to, but we have great ideas of what we want to do. We just need to wait on the opportune moment to do that. So
yeah, of course. And so just before we started recording, you were telling me that just 2 weeks ago, you got authorized to, I guess, I don't know, explain it. You have a social security number now. It's official, right?
Yeah, right. I've been here for a year and a half. And when I told a buddy at the gym that I got my social number, he threw his arms open and just exclaimed, "Welcome to America." I was like, thanks, mate. So yeah, I went through I had a fiancé visa when I arrived, which allows you entrance into the US. And then within 90 days, you have to get married. And that is the only stipulation on that visa. That visa grants you access once, so you can't use it over and over again. You can't go back home and come back. So in the time since I got married, I've been waiting on my employment authorization, which is the first step in your green card process. So I have employment authorization. I'm allowed to travel now, and allowed to travel provisionally, under emergency circumstances kind of thing. And then I'm just waiting on my letter saying that I have an appointment for my interview for my green card. So it's been an interesting season to try and optimize what I can do under certain restrictions, kind of with COVID restrictions aside, trying to make the most of a season when you're told you're not allowed to do something. I'm like, oh, okay, well, I take that as a challenge then. What can I do? What can I work around? What can I kind of figure out and stuff? So I managed to find myself a great community at a CrossFit gym that I now work at, that I got to start running their social media and get thrown right into their community, which is, if anyone's a listener and they're CrossFitter, they understand the community is a big part of the kind of the cult kind of idea of CrossFit. But it is just a fabulous group of people to be involved with, and they've definitely helped keep me sane. My wife has done the heavy lifting of keeping me sane, but getting a good community around me was definitely a great a great step in that process.
Yeah, of course. I can imagine moving to an entirely new place, new
Mm-hmm.
setting, not being able to work, which is how most people spend the majority of their weeks, could be quite challenging, especially in the middle of a pandemic. I mean, I'm sure we'll get there. And so I kind of want to back up and then we can, step forward back into this season of life. But, one of the questions that I'm asking all of the guests on this podcast is a deep question. And it's really, what is the hardest thing that you've had to handle as a person? And that can be taken many ways, but essentially, what is the hardest thing that life has thrown at you that you've had no say in the matter with? And I think I know where you're going to go with it because I know about your story because we've connected, but take it how you want and we'll go from there.
Sure. Well, to go back a little bit further, I was about 14. And one winter, I just got a cough that I just couldn't shake. And I didn't know what it was. I thought I had tonsillitis a couple of times growing up, and it just hadn't been able to shake it this one time. It was really odd. I lost my voice over the Christmas break, and went to the doctors in the January, and he diagnosed me with asthma. And I was like, okay, cool. That makes sense. That makes sense. Some people they develop it a little bit later on rather than when they're young kids. So they tick the box. And I'm kind of grateful that that's what I got diagnosed with, because it meant that through growing up, I stuck at just playing every sport I could pretty much get my hands on. When I was small, I played soccer, which is the main sport back home. I played it a little bit, not with much enthusiasm. I wasn't the most coordinated with my feet. So my dad actually was playing basketball when he and my mum met. So in this kind of amateur level in Scotland and in the UK. So I was kind of surrounded by that growing up. So I started playing basketball more in my teenage years. I got my black belt in Taekwondo when I was 13. So I did a whole bunch of totally different things growing up. Going to long distance running, kind of cross country running back home, because we have hills, so we like to use them as much as we can. And so that kind of just kept me active throughout the whole of my growing up. And then, like I said, I met my wife, and in the process of me applying for my visa, they require you to do a medical exam. They're checking mainly for tuberculosis is the main thing they're screening you for, and making sure you're not going to bring anything into the country, or you're not going to be a liability to the state, basically, when you get here. So in that process, I went down to London to go to a very specific doctor's office that does all of this, the medical screenings for US visa applications. And they went through the regular checks and tests. And the last one they did was a chest x-ray. And for some reason, I had never had a chest x-ray done in my life, despite having asthma and having a few flare-ups. Just wasn't something that happened. And they looked at the x-ray and was like, that's not asthma. Like, yeah, you can see why the symptoms would kind of check what you thought it was, but that's not asthma. And we don't think it's TB, but we need to make sure it's not. So what we're going to do is we're going to get you to come back down to London, stay there for 2 nights. 3 days in a row, I had to give samples of whatever I could cough up in the morning. And but at the same time, they were going to refer me for a CT scan. So this was the December. We'd applied for the visa in the March or April of that year. And you hear nothing. You hear absolutely nothing until they say, yeah, cool, let's go get your medical check and come see us at the embassy. And you're like, oh, okay. And then it's all systems go. So we were not hearing nothing, which is a bit disheartening to start with. And when you're also doing long distance across an ocean with the woman that you want to spend the rest of your life with, that could put a lot of pressure on both of you. And so we got really good at communicating in that process, thankfully. But then in the waiting period, they have to send your samples away for you're a scientific chap, Joe. You'll understand. They send away samples to get to culture. So they send away samples to see what will grow, basically, from what I could produce from my chest. And that can take weeks. And at this point, we had booked our wedding date of March 8th in Dallas. So we were like, what are we going to be able to do? All my family had booked tickets to get there. Her family from Australia had booked tickets to come to the States as well. So there was a lot of pressure going on at the time, and we were just counting down days. I was selling everything I had before I moved here. I sold my car, I sold the guitar, I sold like everything I had to make a little bit of cash so that I had as much as I could when I got here, because I didn't know what the situation was going to be. And the last few weeks, it was getting into February, and we still hadn't heard. But I had a phone call with the doctor at the clinic, and they'd said there was an overgrowth of extra stuff in your sample, so we had to kind of strip it and try and grow again. So this is going to take another X amount of weeks. I was pulling my hair out. It was the most stressful thing I've ever done, and the most frustrating thing, because I had zero power in the entire situation. And through the whole process, this was a great opportunity for my wife, and who I wanted to spend the rest of my life with, for us to have these really hard conversations. And I don't know if anyone's ever been in a situation where they just feel completely powerless, but that is the most powerless I've ever felt. Like knowing the health, whatever came out about the health test, I really couldn't give a monkey's, to use a Scottish phrase about it. I just couldn't care less. And so we talked a lot. We made sure we were communicating each other's frustrations with each other and not letting it come out in subconscious ways. And then we came across this. You had a great conversation about kind of spirituality and stuff with one of your other guests. And you said in your first episode about your moment of your faith and stuff. So a verse that came to us in this process was Romans 5. Verses 3 and 4. I'll just read it really quick. But not only that, but we rejoice in our sufferings, knowing that suffering produces endurance, and endurance produces character, and character produces hope. And that I couldn't think of anything more appropriate for the fact that my wife's name is Hope. That works pretty well. But aside from that, it was exactly what I needed to hear, that it produces endurance, it produces perseverance in us in these situations when we're forced to be patient. And so to kind of wrap that up, February 28th, I go for a CT scan. I get referred for a genetic screening. They don't tell me why. And then I get called into a doctor's office on the February 28th. I go in the doctor's office and he sits me down, and my mom is with me. And thankfully, because she's been kind of helping us through this whole process, and she's just like, "Oh, I'm coming. I'm finding out what the news is when you find out." I was like, "Okay, cool." And the doctor sits me down and says, "You have cystic fibrosis," which, if no one knows, cystic fibrosis is a genetic condition that basically 20 years ago, people my age probably had about 10 years left to live if they had cystic fibrosis. It affects how your airways basically hydrate the mucus in your lungs and in your airways, and helps you cough up the stuff that gets caught in your throat. And so that stuff, you got these little hairs, and they beat and they get the stuff out of your chest that you don't want in there. Basically, the mucus is so thick, these hairs lie down flat, and anything that wants to go into your chest can go in. In this process, I had 3 chest infections between December, January, and February, 2019 into 2020, and I lost about 20 pounds of weight. I'm 6'4" and I weighed about 175 pounds. So a stiff breeze would have blown me over really easily. But at the same time as this, I had found CrossFit about 7 months earlier. And the doctor who gave me the diagnosis told me, he said, "You have cystic fibrosis. You're diagnosed super late, because you normally get diagnosed when you're a baby, but they didn't start those postnatal screenings in Scotland until 3 years after I was born. So I just missed out on that. But normally your symptoms would show up before you're 14, but that just didn't happen with me because of the specific genetic mutations I have." So he's looking at me saying, "You're 25 at the time. I was 24, about to turn 25. And he says, "I don't understand how you're as healthy as you are, though. I kind of have an idea, but what are you doing?" And I was like, "I do CrossFit." And he's like, "That is the best kind of training you could do for what you have." And I was like, wow, okay. I thought I was just being a bit indulgent and wanting to have, I've always been going to the gym and stuff since I left college, but I was just doing that for fun. and just doing it because I like to stay healthy and I enjoyed it and stuff. And I found a great gym back home. But I didn't know it was keeping me alive at the time. And he said that if I hadn't been doing that, those 3 chest infections, I would have been admitted to hospital multiple times. I probably would have required a lung transplant. And so in the process of just trying to stay fit and healthy and looking after myself, aware that I had asthma, and I always told myself, you know what, I'm going to beat asthma. I'm going to make it go away. But because I didn't know it was far worse than that, I was keeping myself as healthy as I could, and it literally saved my life.
Man, I got to take a pause here, and I'm going to start with this. Nobody's called me a scientific chap ever on this podcast, in real life, anywhere. So I just needed to acknowledge that. I think it's really interesting how this challenging situation. So I'm going to rewind to the part where you are talking about the relationship that you have with your now wife overseas. You're not sure what's going on. You're waiting this process. You don't really care about the results of the test. You just want to get over to America and be with her. And you use the word powerless. And I think that's it's a really strong word. But you also said that your communication between you and your wife actually strengthened because of this challenging situation. And I thought that was an interesting point. And the other 2 things that I noticed, you essentially fended off the progression to a certain extent of cystic fibrosis with CrossFit. So you essentially are helping to fend off this one hard thing by doing another hard thing. They both start with CF. I just made that connection in my mind.
That drives me nuts when I'm trying to text someone saying my CF sucks today, and they're like, "Wait, CrossFit sucks or your cystic fibrosis sucks?"
Coincidence? Who knows?
Right.
And the other thing that I loved is that, you brought up Romans 5 verses 3 and 4. That actually hangs over the light switch of my bedroom door. I actually have verses 3 through 5. So I'm going to read it one more time because I think it's really powerful. And you know what I would say too, to anybody listening to the podcast who maybe doesn't have a faith or hasn't read the Bible, take this for what it's worth, but really focus on the words. I'm just going to read it here. So not only that, but we rejoice in our sufferings, knowing that suffering produces endurance, and endurance produces character, and character produces hope. And I just think it's so cool to see that chain of events where sufferings become hope. And through that process, it's suffering produces endurance, endurance produces character, character produces hope. And I think that applies to everybody, not just people who might share the same faith that we have, Andrew. So, one of my questions for you is, what role did your faith play in this entire process?
What role didn't it play? Like, it's the kind of thing that can definitely, it can help you in any situation that you happen to find yourself in. Specifically in the process of being diagnosed with a genetic condition that I know I'll be fighting and wrestling with for the rest of my life. It's given me an idea that there's got to be a purpose to it. And how effective I am at figuring that purpose out on my own, I'm useless. But in my walk with my faith with God and daily trying to be more like Jesus in the way he loved people, that's the highest calling I could really think for my own life. And so in this process of just trying to be a guy who has been dealt a rough hand physically, I'm trying to show to as many people that it is not, I'm not using it as an excuse to be weak. I'm not rolling over to it, and I'm not letting it win the day every day. I show up like no matter what I'm doing in my training. Like, I go through different cycles like any other athlete would. Like, I go through different cycles. That's also something I've started calling myself as an athlete, not out of some kind of egotistical kind of, I'm an athlete, you should respect me. Like, nothing like that. If I think of myself as an athlete, I will train like an athlete, and an athlete works hard day in, day out to be the best that they can be. And so that to me is the best thing that I can think of to make me be consistent about it all. But I need to know that by me showing up every day to the gym, to this community, I can, and talking honestly about, oh, my lung function kind of went down a little bit, or hey, my lung function this year went from 66% average lung function that most people have. So people normally have 100, like your average healthy person will have 100% lung function or thereabouts. And I started off with 66% this year. And 3 months later, I was at 93%.
Wow.
Yeah. And so that's how much it can fluctuate. It's never been that good, I think, since I was 14. I don't think it's ever been over that kind of 75% range. So that was an incredible feeling this year, to know that I was training the most consistently, training the smartest I've ever done, and a new medication that got approved as well played a big part in that. But all of that is nothing compared to the relationship that I built with my wife, and the communication that we had to build during that time that we felt powerless. We had to communicate really well. And even now, people probably say that we talk on the phone a bit much for people that live with each other, right? But I don't care. It's my wife. I want to speak to her as much as I want to speak to her, and she does the same thing. But you know what? You make time for what you prioritize in life and what was valuable to you. And I couldn't think of anything more valuable than the gift that God gave me of my wife, and the hard work that she does in this process that I haven't been able to work or gain any benefits. She's worked a full-time job that's had health insurance that's helped me get all the medication I use. Yeah, I think my faith has helped me to be humble about everything that's going on, understand I can't do any of this in my own strength, and exceptionally grateful for everything that goes on around me and the people that support me and help me.
It's beautiful. And I could definitely relate to many parts of what you just said. And I think one thing I'm thinking of is just, it's amazing how we can strive for things, and maybe not even in our lifetime is where the purpose is found, right?
Yeah.
So I think a lot of times we search for a purpose and we think, oh, I'll find it, when I'm older, or I'll find it later, or at some point it'll come to me. And I think one of the crazy things is, for a lot of people, they might never know their purpose, but they have to trust that there is a purpose.
Yeah.
And for all we know, one of our actions today could affect somebody 80 years from now, when we're long gone.
Or even, I think Tony said in a previous episode about affecting like his great grandson, just by him telling his story and documenting his process of weight loss. That guy, by the way, whew,
oh yeah,
he's a hero. Love that guy. But yeah, knowing that the strength that you show day in, day out with whatever it is you face can be the difference between someone else having hope for their day or whatever they're going through. So that's been a process in trying to be a little more transparent, sharing my story on social media and stuff. But knowing that it can give anyone else hope is worth it. Worth it for putting yourself out there, and be willing to make yourself look a little silly, or have people point fingers at you and say, hey, who does he think he is? That's a Scottish ideal, is them looking at someone trying hard and they go, who does he think he is? But that's, I figured it's worth it to be able to show gratitude and to give someone else hope. So.
Without a doubt. And so, just to go back to your childhood, even when you were diagnosed originally with asthma, it sounded like you just had this mindset that was just there. That was like, I'm going to beat this. I'm going to outwork this. I'm going to overcome this. And then you find out that it's cystic fibrosis. And now the battle, I would imagine, becomes a little bit different. But it's something that you're doing on a daily basis. And so maybe tell us a little bit about what it looks like to live with cystic fibrosis, just from a day-to-day perspective.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, the mindset to start with is key to fighting or wrestling with anything. I think when I had the idea of I want to beat asthma, I was kind of to use a bit of an analogy, it was like boxing with a shadow, and not really knowing. I was fighting, I was throwing punches out, I was trying to do my best, but I didn't really know what it was I was trying to hit. And now I have tools in my toolbox, or or moves in my arsenal that'll help me to fight something tangible, something I know what it looks like. I know what it's trying to do to me, and I know how I can fight back at it. I actually got a new delivery today of this medication called Trikafta. So this is a pill that I take morning and evening. It's 2 pills in the morning, 1 pill in the evening. I have to take it with about 15 grams of fatty food, which sounds like it can, like you can just work it into your macros or whatever. But I figured out this gets me really excited. It fits in perfectly if you have it with a protein shake with whole milk and a grilled cheese. Isn't the Lord good? Won't he do it for us? That's what I have to take with my medication. So that's you can't ask for anything better than that. But then also morning and evening, I use a nebulizer, and so I nebulize, which is like it kind of vaporizes medication that I take in. So I take in albuterol, which is the same as you would get in a little puffy asthma inhaler. I take in a sodium chloride solution. So basically, the albuterol opens up my airways. Sodium chloride solution kind of gets in and moisturizes the stuff that hasn't been able to get moisturized to it. And then, so that's evening, I take that. And morning, I take that, plus I take a medication. So once that is all moisturized, I take this medication called pulmozyme, and that helps to kind of fight against anything that could be happening in there, and just kind of give medication directly into my lungs. I have it very lucky. I am super grateful that this is the type of cystic fibrosis I have. There are thousands of different mutations that affect people differently. I don't think many people know that. If they've heard of CF, then they probably think that it's just one thing. Cystic fibrosis affects thousands of people in different ways, although it only affects a very, very small percentage of people. We know very few people have it the same way twice. There are very common mutations, which I have one of, which is what qualifies me for the Trikafta medication. So if you have one of the most common ones, then you can qualify for that. And that is a big game changer. That is literally giving people who thought they wouldn't see 40 years old, they're like, oh, shoot, I'm not going to need a pension. I'm going to live a long time, and I wasn't planning on it. Like, it's been an entirely different game for people who've been fighting this for longer than I have. But my other mutation gives me kind of residual function, so I don't need to use. I could use, but I just haven't. I use like a therapy vest, which is this oscillating or vibrating vest that you wear, looks like a life jacket, and it vibrates, and it basically helps loosen up the phlegm in your lungs that doesn't move on its own, or when you cough, and it helps move it all up, and then you cough it up. So when I had chest infections, or right at the beginning of me using Trikafta, or for the couple months before that, when I coughed up, people say, like, when you cough up stuff and you're not feeling well, it can be different colors. So I apologize if this is too much information for some people, but it can go from like a nice kind of clear color, and that's fine. You're kind of healthy. That just needs to come out. It goes into kind of yellow, goes into a bit of green. We cough up stuff that's gray. So that's really scary when that happens. There's been a couple of times that I've coughed up when I've had a bad chest infection before getting diagnosed that there was blood in there and stuff. So just if I was coughing a lot, I've burst blood vessels in my chest before. So I have scar tissue in my lungs. And it can get pretty nasty if you haven't got the right care, or you are just have one of those really rough mutations that fights back a little bit better than you can for the most part. But I'm very grateful that I have the medication I have, the mutations I have, and instead of using the therapy vest, my doctor says that CrossFit can basically do the exact same thing, plus a bunch of other physiological benefits as well. So it's been an interesting journey, but thankfully the prescription of intensity that CrossFit gives you is more than adequate to keep your lungs nice and clear. So
it sounds like it. Yeah. And, I don't know if this is a question you know the answer to, and it might change over your lifetime. I'm assuming as technology and medicine continues to advance, but is there a life expectancy that's different than the normal human being for somebody with your type of cystic fibrosis at this point in time?
They haven't been able to kind of pin it down to one, because of all the different factors that go into people moving from Scotland to Texas was a great thing for my health on top of that. Oh, and sorry, I forgot. I take some medications. I also take I take a medication called Singulair, which people with asthma will often take as well. It helps reduce the amount of phlegm you produce while you're sleeping. So that means I'm not coughing as much when I sleep, so I get better sleep. I also take an antibiotic called azithromycin. I take that 3 times a week, and I probably will continue taking it 3 times a week forever. They did a bunch of studies, and they say that you shouldn't be on antibiotics for too long because it can create resistant bacteria and stuff. But for people with cystic fibrosis, it helps us fight against the things that are always trying to get started in our lungs. So I started that as soon as I got diagnosed, before I got Trikafta and all the other stuff. And instantly I started putting on weight because I was the healthiest I'd been for the longest. So yeah, I started off at 175 kind of when I moved to Texas. I now weigh about 215.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's been a heck of a journey. A big combination of American diet and the gym I go to. Our owner who programs our workouts, he loves a leg day, squat days, heavy days. So I just started packing on muscle under all this heavy weights, and it's been great. It's been a great journey. Just this last couple of months, a few PRs. So feeling healthy, feeling good. I want to be the healthiest 80-year-old with cystic fibrosis that anyone's ever known. To steal Tony's idea of being the healthiest 90-year-old, I think he said. I want to be in that same kind of chapter as Tony, where people are just like, he used to be like what? He has what? I want to raise some eyebrows and try and challenge what's possible health-wise for people with cystic fibrosis and raise awareness about it at the same time.
I love that. And you're certainly doing it. And so I think to transition into the next question I have for you, and I'm wondering if it has something to do with CrossFit, but I might as well just ask you, what is the hardest thing that you've done on purpose, and why have you chosen to do that thing?
I definitely think it is CrossFit. I think I had this realization like a month or so into doing CrossFit. You had a group of just random people in a room with black stall mats on the floor, and especially here, the music in the gym is different. Here, there's a little bit more hip hop. It's a little bit more rap. It's that kind of, and I'm loving The Rock's new song. I got drive, I got power. We stay hungry, we devour. That one, yeah, great song, great one to work out to. But so that's the kind of vibe of the music here. Back home, it's far more electric, EDM, dance, rave music. So imagine this group of this hodgepodge group of Scottish people in a room doing burpees to EDM music with the lights fully on. It's just the most bizarre kind of picture you can imagine. Why do we do this? What's the point? But man, I had some tough conversations with myself in my head, looking at middle-aged women and older guys and young skinny girls absolutely blasting away from me, leaving me in their dust in these workouts. It's like, man, what's the point in trying? If they're so much better than me, what's the point? We're doing this for ourselves. We're doing this to challenge our brain. Like, yes, we want to get fit and healthy, but man, the growth you have in your mindset when you're like, you could quit. Go on, quit. Do it. I dare you. Or shut up. I'm going to keep going. I'm going to do one. I quit once. I quit a workout once, and this was a tough thing to kind of swallow afterwards. It was a long partner workout, and at the end of it, it was 100 synchronized burpees with my partner. So right at the end, after a whole bunch of other stuff we did. And so when you're doing synchronized, it's a little bit slower than if you're just doing it on your own. But we were doing it, and this guy, his name is James, and I think he's got 3 sons, kind of teenage kind of age range. And he was helping me through it the whole time, encouraging me. And I got to like 92 or something like that. And I quit. I sat down on the floor and I went, I can't, you just finish. And so he did, and he didn't make me feel bad about it at the time. I was maybe, 2 or 3 weeks into doing CrossFit at this point. And he didn't make me feel bad about it. He gave me a high five. Everyone gave high fives afterwards. Good job, well done. Hey, you killed it. And then I went home, like just kicking myself. Like, why? What's 6 burpees when you've done 90? Like, Really? That's the kind of guy you are, Andrew? You're going to quit at something as simple as that? You aren't the guy that you thought you were. So the next day I went into my garage and I did 100 burpees. And I finished it, and I sat on my back step of my mom and dad's house, and I kind of took a deep breath in of that crisp, cold Scottish air, and was like, that's a victory. That's growth right there. Like in my head, not growth in my muscles or in my lungs or anything like that. That was growth between the ears. That was but no one can take that away from you. Like over time, yeah, your muscles can atrophy or whatever as you get older, but the growth that happens between the ears can stay longer than anything else, and that can have the most value that you can pass on to other people as well.
Man, yeah, it's about the internal negotiation that happens, right, all the time. And I would love, I mean, if you had a YouTube channel or a special, maybe, I mean, I could see you on stage, you know, performing some live stand-up comedy someday, where it was the Andrew who wanted to give up on the burpees versus the Andrew who wanted to finish the burpees. I mean, that would be a great back and forth. But I mean, the truth is like that happens with every decision that we make, whether it's to get up out of bed in the morning when our alarm goes off, or whether it's to actually even get to the gym, let alone complete the workout, or whatever it is. And I'll be completely transparent. The hardest thing for me is to make the right decision on the hard days during the hard workouts when I'm completely by myself and nobody else will know about it. And I think that's one of the beautiful things about running for me, really. And for so many other people, and it sounds like for you, CrossFit, is you get to that point where a big part of you just wants to stop, and you have to find that other part of you that wants to keep going. And you have to convince yourself that that other part of you is right. And I don't know, do you have any strategies for that? Because it's clear that through CrossFit, you've had that negotiation many times over, and you've won it many times over.
I think there's a couple of things. Number one would be accountability, especially in the community of a CrossFit gym. You have your people. If you go to the same class every day, you get to know the same people that go at that time, and they get to know your strengths and your weaknesses, and you want to try and prove that you have as few weaknesses as possible. Because there's that competitive aspect in a CrossFit workout when people around you are watching you, because if they get a finish first, they get a better score than you, and it's bragging rights, it's nice friendly competition and stuff. So there's a little bit of kind of like, there's some people that you work out with that if you have a good relationship with them, you can talk smack with them, you can coax that competitive edge out of them, to the point though, if you show a weakness, that's like a shark smelling blood in the water. I'm like, oh, you're breaking up those box jumps, are you? Oh, I've got you now. I've got you. We're going. So that accountability aspect of it is really powerful to help you not quit. And that, especially with box jumps, that's a workout that happened in the last kind of 3 or 4 months. That I had a couple of guys next to me, especially in this area. So I live right next to Fort Hood here in Texas, which is, I think it's, don't quote me on this, but I think it's the largest military base on U.S. soil, at least by square mileage. So the vast majority of the members of the CrossFit gym I go to are active duty soldiers. So these guys, they can embrace some suck for sure. And so there's that great camaraderie amongst the members and stuff. So that definitely helps. And the other half is of helping to fight against that urge to give up or quit is like I said, it's something you learn the growth between the years. You used an analogy of the woodpecker in a previous episode. Yes, I did cram for this interview, and I listened to all the other episodes.
I love it.
But you said that, and I love the analogy of the woodpecker. Like you said, he bangs his head against the wood endlessly without possibly any result until it eventually happens. And I just started reading Atomic Habits by James Clear, and he uses the analogy of the ice cube melting in water, and it looks like there's nothing happening for so long as it increases by 1 degree, 1 degree, 1 degree, nothing's happening. And until it reaches that 1 degree more and it starts to melt. And that's when the change happens. It's like planting bamboo. Nothing happens, I think, for 7 years, and then instantly it starts to grow. So yeah, understanding that you're making an investment every time you don't quit. And every time you don't quit, you are giving yourself a delayed gratification, which is hard to want, but in the long term, it's definitely worth it. And after you do it once, it gets easier. After you do it another time, it gets a little bit easier to not quit, to the point that there's people who have done thousands and thousands of CrossFit workouts. I don't think I'm at thousands yet, but I'm getting there. And there's those people that quitting's not even a thing in their head anymore. They've killed their quitter, as we like to say in CrossFit. You got to kill your quitter in order to know just how far you can go. And it's do hard things regularly. And I think Joe Rogan talks about that a lot. He's like, these guys that need to get, like, people who do exceptional things just get used to doing hard things that aren't fun, things that suck, that you don't want to do. Intervals on the assault bike, or people call it the devil bike when you're pumping it, or the airdyne bike, like we call it as well. People don't want to do that, but there's few things that will reap the results that reaps. So yeah, a few things there. Embrace the suck and kill your quitter. Well, happens over time, but it's worth it, and you'll surprise yourself with what you're capable of after you do those things.
That's beautifully said. You made me think of a Mike Tyson quote here.
Yes.
Mike Tyson, he's said some interesting things
in
his lifetime, but this one, I actually agree with this, and it's good enough to say on the podcast. But he once said, "Discipline is doing what you hate to do, but nonetheless doing it like you love it." And I think a lot of times in life we get sucked into this mindset of this is hard, this sucks. And we don't get to see the long-term reward. We don't get to see how doing this hard thing in the moment makes us the person that we want to be, or it takes us a step closer to the person that we want to be. And sometimes I'll just have this moment where I'll just pause my day and I'll think about, okay, 90-year-old Joe, 80-year-old Joe, whoever, he's got millions of decisions to make between right now and then. If he always chose the hard thing, and he always did what was difficult, who would that person be? And if then, on the other hand, if he always chose the easy thing, who would he be? And it's going to be some combination, right? I'm not David Goggins. I'm not going to be able to be 100% on the hard things all the time. But if you can choose the hard thing more often than not, and you can win that battle between the ears more often than not, the person that you're going to be long-term down the road is going to be so much different than if you did the opposite. And I think for me, that's enough to pull me in that direction. And I'm curious for you, Andrew, what is the deeper reason or the deeper place that you go when that negotiation happens? Is there a driving force for why you do what you do when it comes to CrossFit or when it comes to anything else that's challenging in life?
As with a few of my answers now, I definitely credit my wife. I think what kind of a man does my wife deserve to be married to? And I think that's a man who is trying to be the best that he can be. That's the thing I get from my dad growing up. He was he had a high bar for us, and not requiring excellence, but requiring 100% effort. He didn't require us to get certain grades, but he really hammered home the idea that you can either hold your head up high or go to sleep at night with peace, knowing that you tried your hardest. And he was an example of that the entire time I was growing up, and still is to this day. He's actually about to turn the big 6-0 at the end of this week. And this year alone, he lost a bunch of weight, took up running, and he was a self-professed, I'm not a runner, I don't like that. And then he actually went for a run with no music and went, I don't know what's happened to me, I loved it. But yeah, he always said that, I'd be sitting in the back of the car and he'd be trying to have a parenting moment, the parenting moments that don't look flashy on social media or anything like that, and trying to have a parenting moment with me, and he goes, and I'm going to be starting to show tears in my eyes or something, and he goes, I'm not being tough on you just to be tough on you. I just want you to be the best that you can be. And he said that the whole way through growing up, and I hated it at the time, did not like it, wished he wouldn't say it. And now I couldn't be more grateful that he said it, because now trying to be the best that I can be, I'm trying to be the best husband that I can be, and I'm trying to be the best son that I can be, the best coach that I can be, the best Jesus follower I can be. That's pretty much it. Yeah.
I love it. I love it. And so to move things in a little bit of a different direction,
Sure.
but in a similar vein, when you hear the word endurance, what does that mean to you?
Yeah. It's probably another Bible quote.
Sure.
It's to run the race that God set out for you. I've got it written down here, actually. Let me just pull it up. Yeah. But I remember thinking about, because I've heard you ask the other guys these questions, that question specifically, so I was thinking about it. Hebrews 12, verse 1. Therefore, since we are surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses, let us also lay aside every weight and sin which clings so closely, and let us run with endurance the race that is set before us. To run with endurance the race that's set before us. Endurance more than just running long or having a long workout. I've got to be honest, I would rather roll for the amount of time that you run any day of the week, just because it just hurts my knees, Joe. That's why. But to run the race with endurance is to wake up every day, to have a purpose every day, to achieve that small goal each day, knowing that those 1% improvements each day is going to compound each day. Yeah, I'd say that one of my little phrases that I try and say a lot is that the kingdom of God's the only place that you get brownie points for trying. So the brownies back home are it's like the Boy Scouts but for girls. And so you always say, you got some brownie points for that. It's just you got points for trying, basically. So you gain these little points for your team. So I say the kingdom of God's the only place that you get points for effort. Other places don't care how much effort you put in unless you can have something to show for it. But in the long race that we have of life, trying to pursue a purpose, trying to pursue a goal, or chase after a calling that anyone might have, running with endurance the race that you see before you, knowing that your lane has been picked for you, and your lane has an eternal purpose, an eternal glory attached to it, and not being distracted by someone else's thinking, oh, theirs is flashier, oh, theirs looks better, theirs looks more fun. Yours is for you.
I think in today's day and age, it's really, really challenging to keep the blinders on and to endure well in your own lane. And I'll be the first to admit, social media is distracting at times. I, like everybody else, have a tendency to fall into that trap of comparison. I think it's human nature, right? To a certain extent. And so for you, as you are, working toward CrossFit goals, as you are working toward life goals, as you are putting yourself in the arena of social media, being vulnerable, being open, being honest, are there things that you are able to remind yourself of, or things you're able to do to stay in your lane, or to self-correct and get back in your lane when you feel yourself getting off course, or wishing you could be a little bit more like this other person, or wishing you could have a little bit more of what this other person has? Are there things you can do to stay in that lane?
I think your daily habits definitely play into that. I want to say, when I say stay in your lane, it's just as much someone like myself be talking about cystic fibrosis and CrossFit on social media. So that would be my public lane. But things that I probably wouldn't post a lot of online is that I love to play guitar. I love to sing in church and stuff. I probably wouldn't talk a lot about that on my online life, purely because I don't think I don't want to, so I won't. I don't think I'm shortchanging anyone on any value I can bring them. But I know that I can be far more effective with when I I want to stay focused on what I need to work on each day. So that focus, your daily habits, can definitely help you stay consistent in those 1% improvements towards your ultimate goal. But I embrace the Matthew McConaughey version of I'm always chasing the 10 years away from me kind of guy. So that I'm always chasing, always trying to improve, always moving forward to try to become that guy. And I don't think I'll ever come close to my ultimate potential, but you get points for trying, right?
Yeah, you're going to get as close as you can,
Absolutely.
Right? So as someone who loves quotes, I have a quote that I've been thinking about recently, and I want to transition this into the final question of the podcast. Yeah. So the quote is from Albert Camus, and he once said, "In the midst of winter, I finally learned there was in me an invincible summer." I'm just going to read it one more time, and then I'm going to ask you this question. Okay. In the midst of winter, I finally learned there was in me an invincible summer. If somebody's listening to this podcast right now, and I'm sure there's somebody out there who's in a darker season of life, who's going through some kind of trial, who is facing some kind of hardship, and they don't know where to turn or what to do, you're now speaking directly to that person. What is it that you would say to the person on the other end of the podcast?
Before I got diagnosed, I used to get really frustrated when I saw people that had medical conditions, when they really pitied themselves a lot. And it sounds really harsh to say that, but I definitely got frustrated seeing them with that woe is me mentality. And I used to always say, man, if I ever get diagnosed with something, I want to show that you don't have to be a damp rag about everything. Like just one of those, it's another day. I've did my medications and just trying. It's really hard. Like, yeah, it's hard, but man, the world is an incredible place, full of opportunities, and that's someone that's seen some of it, nowhere near as much as I want to see all of it, but that's also something I want to do more of. But as someone that's struggled enough, just struggled to fall asleep for coughing through the night, struggled to wake up with enough energy, stay awake through school, struggled with the idea that one of the side effects of cystic fibrosis is that I may struggle to have children. So to know that can be something that I might have to figure out later on, that can be tough to handle some days. But I firmly believe that everyone has a light to shine, and no matter how hard it is, there are incredible stories of people with lives far tougher than mine that are able to shine their light incredibly brightly and bring so much joy and fulfillment and hope to many people. I hope that people can understand that they have a beautiful light to shine, and I want to see it. If for no one else, please, if you have an incredible story, send me a message on Instagram. I would love to hear it and talk to you, and maybe we can encourage each other in our daily battles with it. If it's okay, I'd love to pray with whoever wants to send me a message as well. But yeah, you have a light, you have a worth, and you have a value, and I would love to help you realize that.
I don't think we could end this podcast on a better note than that. And I just want to add that I think it's so cool that you and I met via social media. We hopped on a Zoom call. What was it? Probably a year or so ago at this point, or less than a year?
I think beginning of this year. I posted about getting some BPN supplements, and
so
I've been on that train ever since.
So about 11 months ago, we connected. You messaged me. We hopped on a Zoom call. I believe it was on a Saturday morning, and we spoke for an hour and just struck up this friendship where I felt like you were in my corner. You felt like I was in your corner, and it wasn't just a feeling, it was a knowing. And since then, you know, every time I open up Instagram or I need some encouragement and I come across your content, I know I can always count on at least one laugh. Your sense of humor is incredible, but also just a warm, inviting, welcoming, encouraging spirit. And that's really what I hope the listeners of this podcast get, is that no matter what you're going through, there are people out there who are also going through hard things and also pursuing hard things. And there are people who care about other people. Andrew, you are one of them. I'd like to think of myself as another. Any guest on this podcast is one of those people. And so if you're listening and you want to reach out, I would highly encourage it. I'm here, Andrew's here, and I could vouch for him. Reach out to him and you will not regret that. So Andrew, where is the best place for people to connect with you?
Instagram is definitely the place that I probably spend a lot of time that I probably should spend on other things. But yeah, no, my Instagram is Andy J, just the letter J, and then Rusty. Yeah, so Andy J Rusty on Instagram is the best place to see me and reach out to me and send me anything you want to send me. I love a good meme as well. So, but one thing I would like to, add me on Instagram and stuff. But I've got a Scottish blessing that I wanted to just read it to wrap our time up together.
Sounds great.
So the blessing is, may the road rise up to meet you. May the wind be always at your back. May the sun shine warm upon your face. The rains fall soft upon your fields. Until we meet again, may God hold you in the palm of his hand.
On that note, we will see you guys next time.
Thanks, Joe.
If you enjoyed this episode of the Project Indoor podcast, go ahead and subscribe, leave a review on your platform of choice, and share this episode with a friend. It helps us get more conversations like this out to more people like you. We appreciate you, and we'll talk to you next time. Oh, and one more thing. If you're looking for a community of people all striving to be better together, check out the Project Indoor Hard Things Club. The link is in the description below. We'd love to have you.